Welcome to NarrativeNook where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. She clicked the remote, revealing the second page on the screen. These are Martha's underlings, all the details about the welcome gift you arranged, the time, place and amount, it's all here. Louisa and Kenneth never imagined their child would dare do such a thing in secret. Their disappointment in her deepened. That day she went to Dawnstar's rodeo drive, charging Martin's card with shopping sprees. I happened to be there with Bella, doing some shopping. As an aunt, I wanted to give my niece a warm welcome back to the family with a special something. But that day, something happened. Eunice pressed the remote again, and a boutique surveillance footage filled the screen. I was picking out dresses when I overheard someone deliberately snatching the clothes Bella was interested in. Whatever Bella liked, the person tried to take. Although the store manager noticed Eunice's displeasure and had the rude lady escorted out, banning her from future entry and even firing the sales associate for being impolite to Arabella, Eunice made it a point to inquire about the identity of that affluent girl. The manager didn't recognize her, only noting she wore a pink CNL ensemble and a white beret, with her brown hair in large wavy curls. With the new year around the corner, I was pondering over the perfect gift for Bella. It was perfect timing. Reps from all the major brands were coming around with New Year's gifts, including CNL's vice president with their latest collection. Eunice had been resolute to him, swearing off any collaboration with their brand again. Under his persistent queries, she told him it was due to the low quality of some of their clientele, which tarnished the brand's reputation. Later, I learned from the vice president that they cater only to a few top families in the country. That pink CNL outfit? Only 3 in the world. 2 went to heiresses abroad, and 1 was ordered by Serena. Following the trail, I discovered it was Serena who had the conflict with Bella over clothes that day. The video showed Serena commanding the sales associate to seize the dresses Bella was interested in. After being kicked out of the boutique and barred from all the shops on Rodeo Drive, thanks to Eunice's influence, she stood outside cursing loudly. Ever heard of the Collins family? Do you know who the Collins are? Do you know Kenneth? The Solterra tycoon, you know him. Kenneth and Louisa were stunned by her effrontery. Was this the Serena they had spoiled since childhood? Was this the same Serena, so fragile that she only knew how to cry pitifully? Eunice continued, after shopping, Bella and I went to a rooftop restaurant. I excused myself to the restroom and Serena just happened to be there. Probably spotting Bella, she lied to the manager, claiming she knew her and wanted to say hello. She clicked the remote, and Kenneth and Louisa watched astonishment, as they saw Serena approach Arabella and grab a half-finished glass of champagne from another table, throwing it over Arabella. But Arabella was quick. She grabbed a napkin to shield herself, dodged, and in a swift motion, splashing red wine onto Serena in return. The restaurant's cameras had blind spots, so no one knew it was Serena who'd thrown the drink at Bella. This footage was accidentally recorded by a bystander. The footage ended there, missing the part where Arabella shoved Serena into a plate and soaking her with wine. Kenneth was in shock, and Louisa was shaking with anger. She could never have imagined that Serena, in private, could be so malicious, so brazen in bullying their darling Bella. If Bella hadn't reacted so quickly, hadn't fought back, imagine how cold and how humiliated she would have been drenched in champagne in that freezing weather. This child has gone too far. Louisa's voice trembled with rage. She's terrible. How could she do such a thing? Kenneth was furious. Without Eunice showing them these, they would have been completely unaware of Serena's behavior in private. Before, the girl had put on quite the show, acting as if she adored her sister Bella, and she held Bella in the highest regard. It was all a farce. Behind closed doors, she was actually bullying Bella. Bella must have endured so much suffering, so many indignities at her hands. And there's even more. Eunice's gaze swept over them. Back at our place, Serena would argue with Bella over simple breakfast items like fluffy omelets and cheesy egg wraps. Kenneth and Louisa were speechless by the shock. Could someone really be that petty? Fluffy omelets and cheesy egg wraps cost next to nothing, and besides, since when did Serena even like fluffy omelets? At the time, the chef knew she didn't like them, so he didn't prepare Serena's share. Clearly annoyed, she made some snide comments, leading anyone who didn't know better to think Bella had taken her favorite dish, leaving her with nothing to eat. But as an aunt, how could I arrange only for those 2 breakfast items? The table was laden with a variety of delicious foods, yet Serena still competed with Bella over something so trivial. Her pettiness was excessive, malicious. And there's more. Serena once dragged Dad to go out for a walk in sub-zero temperatures, just to snap photos for Facebook to show off how beloved she was at home, and how close she was with the family. Eunice's gaze settled on them as she spoke calmly. It was her pulling on Dad that caused him to fall. Afraid that others would find out, she warned the servants to keep quiet, and she took it upon herself to apply medication, without even bothering to change his wet clothes promptly. Eunice took a sip of her coffee, then continued, "Bella found out about this and was furious. I heard Serena once complaining that even though she hasn't been deprived of anything in this home, she gets less than Bella, that the gifts you give to Bella are more and more expensive, and so she feels resentful." Kenneth and Louisa were dumbfounded, unable to imagine Serena could be such an ungrateful person. She was living a life of luxury as before, and yet, not only was she ungrateful, but she even had the audacity to speak such words about their precious daughter. How could she say such things? In Serena's eyes, if you buy Bella a purse, she expects an identical one, Eunice continued. But you've actually had hundreds of dresses custom-made for Bella, and none for her. Louisa had to defend their actions, but we've bought her clothes over the past 18 years. If we were to tally it up, she's received more than Bella, never less. But in Serena's view, you're playing favorites, you're not treating them equally. She resents Bella, feeling you've wronged her. Louisa glanced at Kenneth, unable to fathom that after 18 years of care, they had raised such an ingrate. Kenneth was also filled with anger and disappointment. Serena had truly changed, become unrecognizable. After that argument with Bella, I even talked to her. She promised me to my face that she would change, but then... Eunice pressed a button on the small remote. The screen showed Martin and Romeo having a full-blown fistfight right outside her front door, leaving Kenneth and Louisa absolutely gobsmacked. What on earth was happening? Why were these two throwing punches at each other? Over the past 6 months, Serena has kept Bella's existence from Martin, so he had no clue about her, nor did he know Serena was the adopted daughter of the Collins family. What did you just say? Both Kenneth and Louisa were staggered in shock. Serena lied to Martin, telling him Romeo was the kind who abandons the old for the new. She claimed he was flaunting his new flame in front of his ex just to rub it in her face, to deliberately hurt her. She also set up these coincidental run-ins. No matter where Serena and Martin were or what they were doing, Romeo would show up with his new love and outshine them. That's why Martin lost it and threw punches the moment he saw Romeo at my doorstep. Romeo can't be that childish. Kenneth was fuming. How could Serena stoop to such a level? Lying had become second nature to her. Before this, she fooled her good friend Brooklyn Reed, claiming that Bella sabotaged her engagement with Romeo. We had hoped she would change, but she has continued to play the same tricks, even lying to her own boyfriend. Louisa's mind was a whirl of disbelief that wouldn't settle. Romeo is indeed madly in love with Bella, that is not an act. They don't need to put on a show of affection. What everyone sees is genuine, Kenneth defended. That's true. Romeo has always been cared for Bella, Eunice chimed in with satisfaction. He's got her back. Once, Romeo also made it clear to Martin that, before Martin came into the picture, he had rarely seen Serena. He was actually considering calling off the engagement, but then he met Bella, took a liking to her, and that's why the family's engagement went on. What are you saying? Louisa's eyes bulged in disbelief. Could it be that the reason Romeo came over with all those gifts was not to see his fiancée as he claimed, but to break off the engagement with Serena? She and Kenneth had assumed he had heard the news that they had found their biological daughter, and came specifically to bring gifts for his real bride-to-be. But it turned out. No wonder Romeo wasn't around much before, but ever since Bella came back to us, he's been visiting frequently. It was all because of Bella that the family's engagement has held. If Bella hadn't returned, if Serena were their biological daughter, he wouldn't have chosen Serena, regardless of the family's ties or even Philip's persuasion to the point of a heart attack. He simply didn't like Serena, that's the whole of it. Martin must be disappointed with Serena's actions, that's why they broke up, right? Kenneth asked, regretfully. He really thought Martin was a good guy. But as good as Martin was, Serena truly didn't deserve him. Not just Martin, even Kenneth, who had been her father for 18 years, felt chilled to the bone and utterly let down by Serena's behavior. How much more disheartening it would be for someone on the outside. That's not the case, Eunice clarified. Martin still cares for her, but she took it for granted. She even had someone tamper with Bella's lemonade. What? This time, Kenneth and Louisa were utterly astounded, both staring at Eunice as if petrified. Eunice laid out everything she knew. At that time, Mom and Dad were away in Dawnstar, and we all went out for dinner. Bella seemed to sense something off with the lemonade and insisted Serena drink it. Serena was clearly reluctant, obviously scared to drink it. I suspected there was something wrong with it, and sure enough, Serena, out of sheer desperation, drank it and ended up rushing to the bathroom, hallucinating, and even making a move on Romeo in front of everyone. She mistook me for Bella several times and tried to come at me. What in the world are you talking about? Both Kenneth and Louisa were frozen in shock, unable to believe that Serena could turn so malicious. She mistook me for Bella, calling me a homewrecker, saying that if it weren't for me, she and Romeo would have been married by now, maybe even with kids of their own. She accused me of ruining their happiness. Kenneth and Louisa were left speechless and flabbergasted by Serena's distorted values. What kind of dirty words were these, coming from the young lady of the Collins family, who everyone thought was the epitome of grace and wisdom? And she held such a deep grudge against Bella. After all, she had previously pretended to be the world's greatest sister in front of them. She was just hypocritical, too frightening. Later, I had someone look into where this drug was being sold and who was buying it. It took a while, but we found a lead. This is the evidence of her and Martha scheming together, drugging Bella, Eunice said, pressing a button on the remote. A page of evidence appeared on the screen. Do you know what this drug does? It causes continuous flatulence, stomach discomfort, constipation at first, then severe diarrhea, and hallucinations. The effects last for about 12 hours. In other words, Serena had used such a nasty, terrifying drug against Bella. How could she do something like this? Louisa slammed her hand on the armrest of the sofa, her regrets about keeping such an ingrate in their home multiplying, all these years of kindness wasted on her. She should have never been allowed to stay. Even considering the years of care they had given her, Serena should not have treated Bella this way, always butting heads with Bella, and now daring to drug her in secret. If Bella hadn't been knowledgeable about drugs, if she hadn't noticed and had drunk that lemon water, she would have been the one to suffer. This is outrageous. She has gone too far. Kenneth slammed his hand on the coffee table, his heart aching with rage. Of all the mistakes she could have made, she should not have done something this foolish. So, this was the underlying reason why Eunice turned a blind eye to Bella giving Serena a piece of her mind. Serena was bad news, and it was about time she was put in her place. But Serena didn't even realize her mistake, and when no one was looking, she sneaked off to see Romeo. I caught her red-handed, pretending to apologize for her crazed behavior, when in reality, she still harbored inappropriate feelings for him. When Romeo tried to ignore her, she sarcastically asked if it was her sister who told him to stay away from her, insinuating that Romeo wasn't a cold-hearted man. At this, Louisa felt her blood boiling with anger, clutching her chest, fearing she might not catch her next breath, that she might die right there from fury. Kenneth's temples were throbbing with anger as he rubbed them. Serena was truly preposterous, utterly infuriating. And I found something else. Eunice pressed the remote again, and the screen displayed a heap of evidence regarding the scandalous news that went viral some time ago, claiming that using ARBL Clear Group skincare could damage the skin. It seemed initially like a rival company, KT, was behind it. But actually, the person in charge of KT works for Doom, and the boss behind is Martha. Martha works for Doom? Both Kenneth and Louisa blurted out in unison, once again shocked beyond words. How could Martha be involved with Doom, let alone holding a significant position within the organization? I've had people scouring the city and even Dawnstar for any sign of Martha, but she's nowhere to be found. If Eunice ever got her hands on Martha, she'd give Martha a taste of her own medicine, with a good old-fashioned slapfest and a no-holds-barred spanking. The chaos in this household was Martha's handiwork, no doubt. There was this one time, I got a tip-off that someone had put a hit out on Bella. I managed to nab the hitman, but the guy was tight-lipped about who was behind it all. That is, until Bella showed up. Julian, well, he made the guy an offer. Spill the beans, and he'd get a shiny new identity complete with a faked death certificate. Neither Kenneth nor Louisa could believe someone had tried to off Bella, let alone that she was cool as a cucumber, even negotiating with the hitman. Any other heiress would have been scared stiff. Bella's nerves of steel were something else. Bella gave him 2 days to think it over. However, by the end of the second day, he was dead. Kenneth and Louisa were in disbelief. How could such a coincidence happen? Was it foul play? I saw Serena with him right before it all went down. At first, I thought she had something to do with it. Before Eunice could finish, Kenneth interjected, shocked. You mean to say Serena killed him? Impossible. She couldn't have that guts. She's been scared of her own shadow since she was a kid, let alone murder. Let her finish. Louisa said, her voice quivering with shock. It was unthinkable that their sweet little girl, raised for 18 years under their roof, could be linked to a murder. Bella gave the hitman 2 days to decide, right? On the last day, the guy must have had an epiphany. He told one of my guys from the basement that he wanted to see Miss Collins. My guy thought he meant Serena and sent for her. Then it was just Serena and him. No signs of a struggle at the scene, no fatal poison ingested. His hands and feet were still bound, but he definitely died from suffocation. I suspected Serena for a while until another guy from the Doom gang we had locked up, Hugh, wanted to save his own skin and spilled the beans. Turns out, the hitman had a change of heart that night, wanted a fresh start. When Serena showed up, he made it clear he wasn't looking for her, but another lady. Serena pulled out her phone, probably with Bella's photo, and he confirmed it was her. He asked if coming clean meant his freedom and a new identity. Serena had no clue what he was on about but played it cool, saying, "That depends on you telling the whole truth." So he recounted the whole saga of being hired for the hit. Serena was petrified when she recognized the phone number he gave. It was one of Martha's burners, hardly known by anyone. To protect Martha, Serena covertly contacted her, and Martha instructed her to take out the hitman. But Serena had never done anything like that, especially not to a hitman. So, she followed Martha's script, claiming she and Martha were with Doom, dropping the gang's secret codes. She told the hitman he was marked for death for his failure. If he didn't die, everyone close to him would suffer. In the grimy basement, a man by the name of Hugh, unfortunate enough to be caged next to a hitman, was separated only by iron bars. Hugh made an offer to Serena. He could take out the hitman, but in return, Serena had to ensure that Martha would leverage the influence of Doom to free him. He couldn't be left to rot as a disposable pawn of the Doom. After a brief exchange with Martha, she agreed. So, Hugh proceeded to strangle the life out of the hitman, who accepted his fate without a struggle, preferring a silent death over endangering his family and friends. Kenneth and Louisa were stunned beyond belief, their minds reeling from the revelation. The truth was far more twisted than they could have ever imagined. Eunice, too, was caught off guard. Serena hadn't actually killed anyone, but to protect Martha, she had concealed the truth and played the innocent before them all. If Hugh hadn't grown impatient in that claustrophobic cellar, tired of waiting for Martha to rescue him, and hadn't spilled the beans in a bid to save his own skin, they might still be in the dark. Eunice took a sip of her coffee, setting down her mug with deliberate slowness. Her gaze drifted towards Kenneth and Louisa. Hugh mentioned that Serena said something at the time, Eunice recounted. She asked Martha, "Didn't you say your hitman was reliable? So how did Auntie's people catch him and lock him up in her basement?" What did that imply? It meant Serena knew Martha intended to hire a hitman to commit murder, to kill Bella. Yet, not only did she not stop it, when things were about to be exposed, she sought to destroy the evidence, abandon the hitman, and save Martha. Martha might as well be her real mother. Louisa was livid, her heart twisting in agony. She closed her eyes, took several deep breaths, and managed to find a semblance of calm. Kenneth's anger was palpable, a darkness edging his vision, nearly causing him to faint. Their beloved daughter of 18 years had conspired with an outsider to harm their long-lost blood. To say her conscience has been eaten by dogs would be an insult to dogs. Louisa seethed with rage. How could she? How could she conspire with Martha to have Bella killed? What had that poor child done wrong? After suffering for 18 years, she finally came home, only to have someone wish for her death. She doesn't deserve to be part of the Collins family. Even the name Serena is ours to give, and she does not deserve it. Someone fetch that wretched girl. Perhaps due to her anger, the veins on Louisa's hand stood out starkly against her skin as she slapped the coffee table. Edith was about to summon Serena. Hold on, Louisa suddenly added, bring more people. Just in case Serena tried any tricks, played dead, or attempted to flee. They had to be cautious. Meanwhile, images of Martha falling from the 18th floor flashed through Serena's mind over and over. She couldn't believe that the person who had loved her for 18 years was gone. From her initial anguished cries to her now subdued sobs, she had wept for what felt like an eternity. Her tears flowed incessantly like a faucet that couldn't be turned off, and she couldn't accept that a living, breathing person was just gone. It was Arabella. Arabella was the cause of her death. Even as Martha lay dying and bloodied, Arabella showed no mercy. That vile girl was a murderer. She had killed Martha. Martha's death had been so cruel, so tragic. Serena wept bitterly, her hands clutching her knees, her face buried in them, crying as though her heart was breaking. She knew no one would ever love her like Martha did. Nobody would ever be so considerate of her again. Nobody would ever risk their life to protect her. Just then, the door burst open. Serena, startled, lifted her tear-stained face, taken aback to see a dozen uninvited guests before her. Her cheeks glistened with the trails of fresh tears, eyes rimmed red, unable to comprehend why Edith had suddenly brought so many people. Miss Serena. Betty began, noticing her tears and initially moved to comfort her. But remembering the things Serena had done, her voice trailed off, disappointment evident as she looked away, silent once more. Not only was the lady disheartened, but even the servants, having seen the evidence, found Serena to be malicious and terrifying. They had been blind to trust in her supposed kindness and innocence. Madam requests your presence at the main house, Edith announced without any term of endearment, her face stern as if summoning a criminal. A bad feeling washed over Serena as she eyed the group warily. Did Mother say what she wants to see me for? You'll find out when you get there, Edith replied coldly. Are you going to walk on your own, or shall these gentlemen behind me have to escort you? Serena's heart raced with panic. Could her parents have already learned about Martha kidnapping Arabella? It seemed impossible. Arabella's phone had been tossed from the 18th floor by Martha. Without a means to communicate, how could the news have spread so quickly? Even though Martha had fallen from the 18th floor, with hundreds of underlings seeking revenge, Arabella, no matter how tough, couldn't have fought her way out so quickly. Perhaps she died in there, and her parents got wind of it and came to question her. After all, Martha was her nanny. If that was the case, as long as she kept her mouth shut, this would all blow over soon. She could return to being Miss Collins, the darling daughter. Her engagement to Romeo could continue. With these thoughts, she wiped away the last of her tears and stood up, saying obediently, "I'll come with you." Perhaps she had sat crying for too long because as she took a step, she felt dizzy. Her body swayed, and she nearly fell. Edith glanced at her, suspecting that this wretched girl might have sensed something and was feigning illness to avoid punishment. After all the despicable things she had done to Miss Bella, did she think she could play the frail card to escape? Not on Edith's watch. Serena steadied herself, took a moment to gather her balance, and then followed Edith without further protest. Edith's demeanor today was unusually cold. In the past, no matter how much she disliked her, she would always greet her with a respectful Miss Serena. But today, the chill was excessive. Serena racked her brain for Edith's motives and eyed the crowd she had brought with her. They were just supposed to escort her to the main house, So why the need for so many people? It was as if they were afraid she might run. What could her mother possibly want to talk about so urgently? Could it be that Arabella was dead, and that was why everyone's attitude toward her was less warm than before? The thought that Arabella might be dead brought a twisted sense of relief to Serena's heart. That wretch deserved it. Meanwhile, Eunice pressed the remote control with a languid grace. Also, she began, in a voice as calm as a still lake, I've looked into the gifts you've lavished on her over the years. Designer clothes, shoes, handbags, jewelry, properties, cars, even the boutique shops. Everything's been sold. Martha took them all to international auctions to avoid your suspicion. Kenneth and Louisa were stunned into silence, their shock morphing into stone. Perhaps fearing domestic sales would catch your attention, they took their business abroad. Most of the items have been sold off. Eunice added casually. Exchanging worried glances, Kenneth and Louisa felt a chill run down their spines. Putting aside Serena's urgent need for cash, even if she did need it, she had over $10 million in her account. And if that wasn't enough, why sell so many assets? What was she planning? Why did she suddenly need all that money? Louisa's mind raced to a recent memory. No wonder last month I stumbled upon Martha organizing a pile of Serena's unworn clothes and accessories. When I asked, she told me Serena wanted to donate them to the less fortunate in rural areas. At that time, I thought what a kind-hearted child. But in reality, Martha had been secretly selling them off to line her own pockets. It was utterly repugnant. What does she need all that money for? Kenneth asked Eunice, his voice barely concealing his disappointment. Eunice replied with a serene detachment, my guess? She probably feels that with Bella back in the picture, eventually everything will go to her. As the adoptive daughter, her share will diminish. So, she's cashing in while her title still has value. It seemed that to Serena, only the money in hand was truly hers. Is this the same girl we raised for 18 years, protected and cherished as our own? Louisa turned to Kenneth, her eyes brimming with a sad, bitter smile. They had treated her like their own flesh and blood, yet she saw them merely as ATMs, monkeys to be played, fools to be duped. No wonder she's been coming up with excuses lately. Good grades, piano progress, praise from tutors, to get rewarded. One moment she wants an island abroad, the next a villa. She's been eager to liquidate. Kenneth's heart was too heavy for words. They had indeed raised a fine daughter. When Serena entered the living room, following Edith, the sight of Eunice sitting elegantly on the couch, as imposing and intellectual as ever, struck her. Uncle Bard looked at her with the eyes of a stranger, his thoughts inscrutable. But it was her mother Louisa, her eyes shut in a mix of grief and anger, who caught her attention. After a long moment, Louisa wiped away a tear that had escaped her control. And her father Kenneth, with a hand pressed against his temple, seemed troubled and weary. Uncle, Auntie, you've come? Serena greeted them with her usual sweet and sensible smile. I'm so happy to see you. This year's going to be livelier than ever. Bard didn't respond, and Eunice merely lifted her teacup to sip her tea, disregarding the presents before her. Serena, puzzled by their coldness, turned to Louisa and asked with a forced smile, Mom, why are you crying? Did something happen? Dad, are you not feeling well? Headache? Shall I help you with that? Louisa wiped her tears and struggled to compose herself. After a brief pause, she stood up and walked towards Serena. The girl standing before them still wore that innocent, clear smile, her attitude sincere, her eyes bright with unfeigned innocence. If it weren't for the evidence they had just seen, the numerous things Eunice had revealed, Louisa would never have believed that this sweet girl could be so heartlessly cruel, so petty and vindictive. With a resounding slap, Louisa's hand struck Serena, knocking her to the floor. Serena fell, her mind a blank, looking up in confusion and fear at the woman she had always called Mother. Why would Mother hit her? Mom, what's wrong? Did I do something wrong? Never before, even when she had made the gravest mistakes, had her mother laid a hand on her. What was different today? Look at the mess you've made, Louisa, seething with anger, pointed at the projection on the wall. Eunice had set up a slideshow, and only now did Serena realize with utter shock that there was a projection on the wall. As the list of her past misdeeds unfolded before her eyes, including fighting with Arabella over a dress, splashing wine on Arabella, slipping a drug into Arabella's drink, and even hiding the truth about a killer's death, the more Serena saw, the colder and shakier she felt. Was this why Mother was confronting her? Was it Eunice? Had Eunice gathered this evidence and presented it to her parents? Why would Eunice want to hurt her? Yes, it had to be Eunice. Only Eunice would do this because Eunice adored Arabella and disliked Serena, the outsider. Serena's gaze was one of shocked disbelief, mixed with resentment, as she turned to look at Eunice, who sat on the couch still exuding her usual charm. "I told you, give me a few days to wrap up some business, and I'd come for you." Eunice's words sent a chill down Serena's spine, leaving her mind utterly blank. What to do? How could she explain herself? Every single thing here was enough to send her parents into a fury. They might even kick her out of the house. What was she to do? If only Martha were here, she'd have an idea. But Arabella had caused Martha's death. Damn that Arabella. With such damning evidence, how dare you try to squirm out of this? Louisa, seeing her like this, grew even more incensed, gritting her teeth. At this point, you're still trying to make excuses? How could the Collins family have raised such a heartless creature? Hearing her mother's thunderous roar and scathing words, Serena was petrified, her tears stuck in her eyes, frozen in place. Her mind went blank with fear. She didn't know how to explain, only managing to crawl over, blurting out in panic, "Mom, you've got it all wrong, it's not what it looks like. You have no right to call me Mom, nor to be my daughter, you soulless, venomous, cruel, despicable cur." Just as Serena crawled to her feet, she was kicked away. "You dare to live as nothing has happened and to bully my own daughter, how can you have the face to live in this world? You're the most terrifying, most vile, most disgusting creature I've ever seen." Louisa spat out, kicking Serena again with all her might. Serena felt a cold shiver run down her spine, her face drained of color. Growing up, her mother had never used such foul language to scold her. Before Arabella came into the picture, she was the family's darling princess, doted on by everyone. She got everything she wanted with just the snap of her fingers, living a life of luxury and ease. But now, her mother was unleashing such venomous words at her, had kicked her twice, and slapped her across the face. Before Arabella's return, would her mother have ever dreamed of treating her like this? Every harsh word, every action cut like a knife, stabbing deep into Serena's heart. Watching her mother tremble with anger, tears streamed down Serena's face. "Mom. Don't you dare call me Mom again. You're not worthy." Louisa pointed an accusing finger, her voice choked with cold anger and disappointment. "We raised you for 18 years, treating you like a treasure, always at your beck and call. While you lived in the lap of luxury, throwing money around like confetti, our own flesh and blood suffered for a full 18 years out there." Tears fell like rain from Louisa's eyes as her chest heaved with fury. "Your birth mother died in that terrible fire, and your father disappeared. We didn't throw you out on the street right away. Instead, we treated you like our own daughter, allowing you to continue living a pampered life, surrounded by luxury and adoration." Louisa sobbed uncontrollably, her voice filled with rage. "We didn't expect repayment or gratitude, all we hoped was that you would get along with our true daughter. But you went behind our backs time and time again to bully her, and in the end, you resorted to despicable and vile tactics like drugging and hiring a hitman. Are you even human?" Louisa shook with anger, her eyes full of pain and fury as she glared at Serena. "Even a dog we raised would wag its tail for us, but after 18 years, you nearly killed our own beloved girl. You deceitful, cunning, and heartless creature, we never should have kept you, never should have treated you like our own." Hearing her mother's words, Serena was panic-stricken, desperate to explain, but Louisa closed her eyes, letting the tears fall, heartbroken and utterly defeated. The more they had cherished her in the past, the more they now felt a profound regret. They had been blind, not seeing their own daughters suffering until now. "Louisa, come here quickly." It was then that Kenneth called urgently. "Romeo sent a message, it looks like something's happened to Bella." "What did you say?" Louisa rushed over, and saw that Romeo had sent several videos, the first of which seemed to show their daughter being ambushed in an abandoned building. Eunice leaned in to watch, and Bard, unable to see, suggested, "Honey, cast the video so everyone can see it clearly without crowding around." Right. Kenneth quickly handed his phone to Eunice. Eunice removed the back cover of the small remote, took out a connector for the phone, and once connected, the video content was projected onto the white wall with crystal clarity. They all watched as Martha surrounded Arabella with countless henchmen, even tying her up, and anger surged through them like a tidal wave. It turned out that all the dangers and troubles their precious Bella had encountered before, including the pilot's sudden heart attack, the appearance of a mysterious man in the restaurant and more, were all orchestrated by Martha from the shadows. What shocked them most was that their child had known about these things for a long time. Not only did she know, but when she spoke with Martha, she kept referring to Serena as your daughter. Could it be that Serena was Martha's daughter? Her own flesh and blood? With this thought, everyone's gaze shifted back to Serena. Serena herself was confused, not understanding what was happening. Martha was supposed to be her nanny, who had cared for her since she was a child. How could she suddenly become her real mother? Her real mother wasn't the one who died in that fire, was she? But if Martha wasn't her real mother, why didn't she deny it when Arabella said that?
For listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.